Hi, I'm Jim Paxson. Whether it's counting sandhill cranes, or moving bison to protect a national park, or confiscating tigers to protect the public, the good folks at Arizona Game and Fish are the ones who answer the call. Those stories and more next on Arizona Wildlife Views.
Arizona Wildlife Views is brought to you by the sale of hunting and fishing licenses and the Heritage Fund, lottery dollars working for wildlife. Some projects made possible by the Sportfish and Wildlife Restoration Fund.
Good evening and welcome to our show. We begin tonight at Whitewater Draw in southeastern Arizona, where more than 20,000 sandhill cranes migrate each winter. We know how many there are because we count them.
55, 40, 45.
By the tens and by the hundreds.
240,
190,
320.
They're counting thousands of sandhill cranes.
That's 320.
170.
This avian arithmetic is conducted by the Arizona Game and Fish Department. The goal is an estimate of the total number of sandhill cranes that spend their winters in southeastern Arizona.
Go 200 on that.
Each year, around the first week of January, teams of game and fish biologists and volunteers are stationed near several locations in southeastern Arizona where sandhill cranes like to roost.
120.
120.
Early each morning, waves of cranes leave their roosting sites in search of food, a perfect opportunity to count them.
The wave's starting rather 35 in rather small flocks of 5 or 10 or 50. But as the morning progresses, the waves of cranes become numbers so numerous that we can no longer accurately count individuals. So we're estimating them typically in blocks of 10. But sometimes you'll have so many cranes fly over all at one time that you start estimating in blocks of 50 or even 100.
The estimates are fairly consistent from year to year.
So that tells us that we're probably not that far off.
And this location is always the busiest. It's near Whitewater Draw, the primary roosting site for sandhill cranes in southeastern Arizona. It's a 1,500-acre property, almost 2.5 square miles, owned and managed by the Arizona Game and Fish Department. It's also one of the Audubon Society's globally important birding areas, a mix of wetlands and grasslands that support an abundance of birds and other wildlife.
It's awesome. I've never seen so many birds and all in one spot ever.
I like to take pictures of birds. And in Arizona, there's an abundance of birds that we can find. That's why we're here.
Of course, the big draw to Whitewater Draw is the sandhill cranes.
Yeah, they're flying off. Something's caught their attention. They were coming in like 30, 50, 70 in a flock, from different parts on the sky, and they were just so awesome to watch come in.
People come from far away to see them.
We're from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Well, I'm from Escondido, California. My friend Darwin is from Tucson.
Get a lot of locals, get a lot of people from all over the world.
We are from Victoria, British Columbia in Canada.
Yeah, we on average will have 5,000 sign-ins in a year's time. And that's not even close to how many people actually come here, but that's pretty much the average of what we get every year. Gosh, one year I listed all the different countries that were in the sign-in sheets, and it was just amazing. There was countries I hadn't even heard of.
Been getting some good shots?
Yes, I think so, yeah. Give me lots of opportunities anyway.
The cranes start showing up in October, and they stay through most of February. They come from the northern United States, Canada, and as far away as Siberia.
They're a lot of fun, especially when the wind's blowing. They cup their wings way up high and they just kind of parachute in. It's pretty fun to watch them.
Jim Garrett gets to see the cranes come and go. He lives at Whitewater Draw and takes care of the place for game and fish.
A lot of weed eating, a lot of mowing around, especially in the summer, of course.
He's constantly working on habitat improvement projects. In dry years, that sometimes includes pumping water to keep the wetlands wet. He takes great care to maintain this place. After all, Whitewater Draw is a valuable tourist attraction that's important to the local economy.
We bought a bird book today so we can start to understand what all these different kinds of ducks are and other birds that we're seeing.
It's a hit with wildlife watchers and with outdoorsmen who enjoy hunting in designated areas of the property.
65.
This annual survey of sandhill cranes enables Game and Fish to monitor population trends and implement sound wildlife management policies.
Crane numbers have been steadily increasing since we started counting them in the early 90s. The department acquired this property around 1997, and back then I think we were counting around 5,000 sandhill cranes, and that number has steadily but rapidly increased to the current 20,000 cranes that we've been counting every year for the past several years. 25? Starting to slow down a little bit now. It's probably about 7:40 in the morning.
After the last of the cranes is flown, it's time to crunch the numbers. The tally takes place back at the bunkhouse at Whitewater Draw. And it doesn't take long to get a final count.
22,577.
That's 22,577 cranes at Whitewater Draw. Another 4,039 were counted at 4 other sites for a grand total of 26,616 sandhill cranes wintering in southeastern Arizona. That number's down a bit from 2013, but it's really close to the average for recent years. It all adds up to a lot of cranes and some very happy people who get to enjoy another amazing Arizona outdoor experience.
It's really a treat to be here.
In spite of how it may look, this is not your typical rodeo, but rather a multi-agency wildlife management experiment to try to control the number of bison that have migrated into Grand Canyon National Park.
Our effort here to try to capture these bison today, relocate them down to House Rock Valley. It's all part of a bigger plan that deals with trying to manage this bison population.
Managing this bison population has been an ongoing challenge since they first came to the North Kaibab in 1905. Charles Buffalo Jones brought 35 head to the area to try to crossbreed them with cattle. The experiment failed, and the remaining bison went to Jones's partner, Jimmy Owens. Owens allowed the animals to range at will, and they drifted down to the Kaibab's East Range and took up residence in House Rock Valley. In 1923, with only 57 bison remaining, Arizona's state game warden negotiated for the state to buy the animals, and that deal put Arizona squarely in the buffalo business.
This population has started to become more and more migratory over the years. They've been moving up onto the Kaibab Plateau and spending less and less time in House Rock Valley. That really started kicking in the 1990s. There are a lot of things that kind of influenced that, range conditions. There have been some fires that have kind of facilitated their movement up onto the forested plateau. And they've also avoided disturbance, primarily in the regulated hunting that we do here. And they become resident on Grand Canyon National Park.
Bison are considered native wildlife within their historic range, and while they are a popular attraction for tourists, their sheer numbers are impacting the natural resources on the park.
Because we have such limited water sources and water limited across this plateau in general,
There are very specific species that depend upon that water, and our concern is that we may lose those species, or they may be pushed away.
So the Grand Canyon National Park is working with us and with the U.S. Forest Service to go through the environmental impact statement process to develop a management plan for bison across this whole area, and specifically for them on the Grand Canyon National Park.
The question of what to do about bison in the park has been around for years. Numerous options have been discussed, including relocation, but figuring out the safest way to capture and move the massive animals proved elusive. That is, until E.D. Edwards came along.
We got to see what it is and decide if we need to sort it, and that's going to be a quick decision whether we're going to sort them or load them all at once.
I was invited here by the Game and Fish to assist in some bison relocation. Fortunate enough that they called me. I've been dealing with bison for the last 20 years, so it gave me an opportunity to learn some more myself, as well as maybe pass on some knowledge to them.
A large corral was set up in the park with the gate tied open so the bison could come and go as they pleased. It didn't take them long to figure out this was an easy place to find food and water. To further condition them to the situation, the same pickup truck would drive by the pen every day. Then one day, with about 40 bison in the corral, the folks in the truck jumped out and closed the gate.
That's how it ended up, but a lot of work was preconditioning these animals to where it wasn't stressful or a traumatic experience on them. They've been visiting the capture site just the way it was used today for several weeks. They've been fed and watered there, so it's a nice place for them to be. So the only thing that happened today different than yesterday is that somebody closed the gate.
After the gate was closed, the bison were given several hours to settle down. Then 2 large trailers were brought in, and the fun of loading about 20 one-ton wild animals began. The bison were hazed into the chutes, with gates closing behind them as they went, until their only way forward was into the trailer.
Went off without a hitch, just like it's supposed to. These animals have been around for a long time, and they kind of look big and dumb and that, but they've learned to adapt and survive a lot of different things over the last 100 years, and they're very smart. So we got to give them credit there and that, but they're also manageable if we as people slow down and take the time to kind of understand what they're looking at.
The trailers full of bison then head out for the 2-hour drive down to House Rock Valley. Back at the pen, the gate was reopened and the remaining bison were allowed to leave on their own. When the trailers arrived at House Rock, the bison were released into large corrals where they'll be fed and watered for several weeks before they're released.
We're very optimistic that these bison that are here today were born on the plateau, and so that they won't actually have any memory of having been here before. We're hoping to catch younger animals that don't have any experience down here. We're going to go ahead and acclimate them to this area, feed them, care for them, kind of make them feel comfortable being down here in a habitat that's really much more traditional bison habitat.
While the relocation today was successful, it's too early to tell if this is a method that can contribute to managing bison numbers in the future.
They recognize them as native wildlife, and they want to be able to manage them in a way that benefits everybody.
We have a mission, and we're here to protect and preserve that exists for now and the future and future generations. But also this park was set aside for a very specific purpose, and so we're really looking at that. We want our actions to align with that mission and of preservation and protection. But we also want to keep it in the most natural state that we can, because that is what we were handed to care for.
Did you know that Arizona is the only state where all 4 North American deserts come together? In southeastern Arizona, you'll find a portion of the Chihuahuan Desert. It's the largest desert in North America, covering more than 200,000 square miles, most of which runs south into Mexico, and it has a low diversity of plant species. In the opposite corner of the state, you'll find the Great Basin Desert. This is considered a cool desert because of its northern latitude, and it contains some stunning Colorado Plateau features, such as the Vermilion Cliffs. The largest Arizona desert is the Sonoran. It's also the most biologically diverse of the North American deserts, and the only place in the world where you'll find the saguaro cactus. In between the Great Basin and Sonoran is the Mojave, where the iconic Joshua tree is one of the indicator species. It's about the last thing you'd expect to see on Facebook: photos of 2 Bengal tigers living in your neighbor's yard.
Originally, the department was notified from some people that had seen these tigers on social media, and they gave us a heads up, and we followed it up, and sure enough, this gentleman had 2 Bengal tigers. They were young, but they were already in the neighborhood of 400 pounds. So even though they're babies, they still had some good size on them. And of course, all carnivores are prohibited to possess here in Arizona. So the officers started an investigation. They followed up, and they found these tigers, a white one and a normally colored one, at 2 different residences located in the Phoenix metropolitan area.
We work with Arizona Game and Fish, and they called us late one day and said, "Can you take a tiger in? We're about to confiscate one." And I said, "Sure, why not?" We have a very high security area that we can do that in, both keeping the animals safe and the public safe, and when they're evidence, keeping that safe. So I said yes, and so they brought the first tiger in, and then we got a call a couple of days ago saying that there was a second tiger and could they bring that. So of course we said yes, and luckily the tigers knew each other, so we were able to get both cubs together, so that really relieved a lot of their anxiety, and so now they're playing and eating well.
Trying to raise an exotic animal such as a tiger as a domestic pet is not only dangerous, but it's illegal in most states, including Arizona. It's also cruel and inhumane to the animal.
People do all kinds of horrible things trying to keep them, removing claws, removing canines, and they've got very special diets. A big tiger's eating pounds and pounds and pounds of meat a day, and they need bone and viscera. You can't just feed them hamburgers. So it's they're very specialized creatures, and your average person that lives in a neighborhood isn't in a position to meet the dietary needs of a large carnivorous animal like that, much less the housing needs.
Situation I know of is they were tied up in a backyard with a horse lead rope, and how they didn't get loose is just amazing to me, and how some child wasn't attracted to want to see a tiger is just really a miracle that nobody was hurt during all this time. Those were the crates that they were kept in. Yes, which was very inhumane. They could hardly even turn around in those crates, and they were chewing their way out of the crates. So it's just a time bomb about to explode.
Since the tiger's owner was nowhere to be found, Game and Fish turned them over to the Out of Africa Wildlife Park, where they would have a much larger space to live in, the specialized care they need, and brand new names.
We got a call from Game and Fish, and they said they had 2 tiger cubs that were in someone's backyard. And it was very mysterious. Not much was known about the cubs or how they came to be in a backyard or who the owner was. But they needed a home, and we are kind of in the business of taking in rescues. That's why we don't breed any of our predators here, so we can take in as many rescues as possible, like Journey and Gabriel here. You know, it's always very sad when rescues like this need to occur, especially for the animals being bounced around. But these two are just very, very lucky that they got to come to our facility. So in store for these guys, we've got other tigers for them to play with and mentor them, teach them how to be a tiger, teach them how to behave. Because tigers need to learn quite a few things. They're born not knowing, like for instance, like how to hunt, and we hope that they don't. He saw a bird. We hope that they never want to hunt us, but we're going to teach them just how to play and have a lot of fun.
Not every wild animal raised in captivity is as lucky as Journey and Gabriel. When there's no zoo or sanctuary space available, the animals are often euthanized or forced to live out their lives in cramped, inadequate cages. Even more disturbing, it's believed that more exotic animals live in American homes than are currently cared for in American zoos.
You can buy them off the internet, out of catalogs, and it's just a really bad idea. They don't belong as pets. They grow quickly. You've got a small cub who in just a period of months is big enough to eat you, eating you literally out of house and home, 40 pounds of meat a day. It's just a bad, very dangerous idea.
Almost every animal at Southwest Wildlife Sanctuary in Scottsdale is here because of someone's failed experiment at domestication. Still, the exotic pet trade continues to flourish, and while several bills have been proposed to outlaw private ownership of these animals on a federal level, lawmakers have been unable to pass any of the legislation.
People forget that even though these things may have been bred in captivity, they're still wild animals, and they still do things that wild animals do, and because of that, they're unpredictable. Heaven's sakes, just think of all the dog attacks we get in the Phoenix metropolitan area each year, and these are animals that have been partners with human beings for eons, and so here's probably one of the most domesticated animal on the planet, and they still kill people and attack people, and now you've got an animal that's very shortly removed from its wild heritage, and you're put in a situation where it could possibly harm somebody. It's a very volatile and very dangerous situation.
Finding Bengal tigers in someone's backyard is a rarity in Arizona, and the exotic pet trade isn't the only way people end up with exotic pets. All too often, someone simply picks up a young animal they find in the wild and take it home. This baby bighorn sheep had been living with a woman in Siloam before it was confiscated by a game and fish officer. The same is true for this elk calf that was found living in a yard near Safford. Both animals were taken to the Adobe Wildlife Center, where they were cared for until they could be placed in appropriate facilities. Unfortunately, because they were kept as pets, even for a short time, they cannot be released back into the wild.
Actually, something that happens, too frequently is people actually think, oh no, it's abandoned, it's just going to die, and so they want to do the right thing and they pick it up when actually that's probably the worst thing that they could actually do for it, because, that's just a typical behavior. The mother will actually bed them down, and then they'll go off the feed or, and then come back for it later, and somehow they know exactly where they left it, and they'll actually come right back to it. But in this case, I'm sure when the mother came back, it was gone. So, rather than an animal that was living in the wild, where we would typically expect to find elk, this one will be, placed in a facility somewhere because, it's been around humans, and it's, probably not a candidate to go back to the wild.
Oftentimes the department's put in a position where we have to save people from themselves. And so, we all make bad decisions every now and then, but probably one of the worst decisions people can make is to have a large, potentially dangerous animal in a neighborhood or a setting where it could possibly hurt someone.
Wild animals are beautiful and alluring creatures, and our desire to commune with them is natural. But for everyone's sake, they are best observed from a safe distance. By leaving wild animals in the wild, we can appreciate them for what they truly are and not what we want them to be.
Well, that's our show for tonight. Hope you enjoyed it. For more information, visit our website at azgfd.gov. For all the fine folks at Arizona Game and Fish, I'm Jim Paxson. We'll see you next time.